Hey everybody, how's it going? I hope you're all having a lovely day. So, a few days ago, I discussed a new COVID vaccination mandate in New York City. This is different from the existing mandate. The existing mandate says that if you wish to enter a restaurant, a bar, or a gym, that you are going to now have to show a vaccination card that proves that you were vaccinated. If you live in New York City, you realize what a joke this is. Unless you're going to a major Broadway show, you could literally show them a tissue and nobody cares. I've been to one restaurant in the past 4 months that have actually enforced this by looking at the paper that I was giving them. They ask if I have it, and the moment I go to kind of take it out, they're like, "Oh, you're fine," because nobody wants to enforce this. And that is really just for restaurants, bars, and gyms, and also for Broadway and the theater. Now, this new mandate is going to apply to all businesses. Whether you're working at an office, again, whether you work at Salesforce in an office, or whether you work at a repair shop, you work at whatever it is, you are going to have your employees vaccinated by December 27th. If they are not vaccinated by December 27th, well, it sucks to be you. You will not have those people as employees anymore. Now, it looks like this is not making its way very far. It says over here that Mayor de Blasio's COVID-19 vaccine mandate for New York City employees has been blocked by a Manhattan court. On Tuesday, Judge Frank P. Nervo in the Supreme Court of New York gave notice that the mandate was suspended pending a hearing scheduled for December 14th, and it goes into more detail here in this Bloomberg article, and they go on to discuss one of the lawyers involved. They said, Patricia Finn, an attorney who describes herself on Twitter as the Good Health Lawyer, launched a legal challenge against the mayor's mandate. She regularly espouses anti-vaccination views on her social media accounts. So, hey, I'm always open to a spicy social media account, so I decided to click on it and take a look at what's here. I usually don't go on Twitter because it kills my brain cells. But it says a two-tiered society is what you get when you impose unconstitutional mandates. She retweeted a poll where people were asking if they think vaccines should be mandatory from Good Morning Britain. Let's see here. She called the mayor authoritarian. I don't know. This is fairly lightweight stuff. Maybe she's a kook. I don't know. I didn't bother scrolling through the entire freaking thing. I always find it interesting when they when they throw those little things in there just to kind of program you to respond a certain way in the article. Again, for all I know, she may be a kook and a loon. I don't know. I didn't scroll through the whole freaking thing. I try to not spend much of my time on Twitter to protect my brain. But this is going to be an interesting thing all around. As I said, I have everybody at my business besides one individual vaccinated. The one person who is not vaccinated is somebody who already got COVID and beat COVID and has natural immunity, and I'm not going to be letting him go over that. Him being 30 to 45 minutes late every day, well, we'll see about that. But I'm not firing him for not getting the COVID vaccine because he had natural immunity. And I had mentioned in my prior video, I just don't think it's my place to tell you what you do with your body. As your employer, I can tell you show up on time. By the way, you really should show up on time if you're watching this. I can tell you to show up on time. I can tell you, fix this, do that. But your medical stuff is where I just kind of think it's no longer my business. Now, what I think is going to be interesting here is the deadline, December 27th. So that means about 2.5 weeks for over 180,000 businesses in New York City to get this done. For 180,000 businesses to walk over to their employees and say, if you don't do this by December 27th, you're fired. This is going to be something crazy for several reasons. So there's I don't even know how to predict what's going to happen or even how to begin pretending to predict what is going to happen here. You have certain demographics in the city that have an under 60% vaccination rate if you're talking about both shots. So you're talking about specific demographics of people, often minorities, that are all going to be tossed out of work. We have a lot of talk about income inequality in this country. We also have talk about white privilege. We have talks about certain groups that do not have the generational wealth that other groups have. There is a lot of talk about unfairness and how certain groups make less money than other groups. You are putting in place a mandate that is going to mandate that groups that have been historically shit on are no longer allowed to be employed. This is going to be something else. This is such a mess. in so many ways. And I also think it's going to be a mess in terms of enforcement. As I've said, the enforcement arm of most of the stuff in New York City is absolutely fucking clueless. As I went over in this video, New York City doesn't know its own laws. I used to sell laptops in my store that I assembled from recycled parts. I do not buy laptops because most of the time when someone shows up and says, hey, I want to sell this to you, it's very obvious it's stolen. An inspector walks in and asks, let me see the Leeds Online record for this that shows where you bought it. I told him I don't have that record because I didn't buy it, but I can show you the thread in Repair Shopper where this customer did not pick it up after 2 or 3 years and I did not purchase it. He had no interest in looking at my records. He got a cell phone. He called someone. He came back inside the store after going outside to have a conversation and wrote us up a fine. I called the New York City Department of Consumer Affairs to ask how to be in compliance with their law. They were not able to tell me after 15 minutes. I emailed them at the address that they told me to email, and to this day, I patiently await their reply, as Thomas Sowell would say. And I imagine that this is going to bring in a lot of revenue for the city when they start walking into every business and they start asking for proof of vaccination, and if you don't have it, they start fining you. I also think this is going to be particularly interesting because when you just look at all of what has gone on over the past several years, this is going to be a really easy way to go into businesses that are owned or mostly staff those demographics that have lower vaccination rates and say, oh yeah, we're going to be shutting down your business or firing half the people there. Because that's definitely not going to lead to any sort of conflict that's going to cause tension in society. This is an absolute clusterfuck, a nightmare, and a disaster waiting to happen. This is bad. This is just bad shit. And I am glad that there is a judge that has suspended the mandate. And that this is going to be passed on to the next mayor. Again, I really do wish that the next mayor would say whether or not he agrees or disagrees with this mandate, rather than just kind of leaving it up to chance, because this is going to affect people's livelihoods. It's going to affect the way they run their businesses. If they have employees that refuse to get vaccinated, they need to know, okay, are we just going to be taking the risk and fighting the city? Do I have to fire them and replace them with somebody else? Do I have to have this conversation now? It really sucks that this conversation you have to have this little cloud over your head until the end of the year and then into next year. Again, you're going to be celebrating Christmas not knowing if you are going to get fired. You are going to be celebrating Christmas not knowing. Again, there's so much talk about this disproportionate impact and how certain policies disproportionately impact people of color or minorities or trans people and so on and so forth. You literally have a policy that is you have all the statistics in front of you. You can see the numbers with your eyes, and you have a policy that is going to disproportionately force you to fire black people in one of the most progressive cities in the United States. I want you to think about how this is going to be enforced just for a moment. You're going to have somebody who's probably walking into every one of these businesses asking for proof of vaccination. If you don't have proofs of vaccination, forcing those businesses to either A, close, or B, fire those people on the spot. When you consider that the definition of racism at this point in time is disproportionate impact, how a policy may disproportionately impact somebody even if race is not considered in the policy, and when you consider the fact that certain demographics in the city have a less than 60% rate of people who have gotten both shots of the vaccine, what are you going to do? Seriously, in the most, quote, progressive city in the world, you are going to have an agent from city government go into an underprivileged community, walk into businesses that already got ravaged and fucked by COVID and shutdowns and lockdowns and everything else over the past 2 years, and say, you need to fire 50 or 40% of your staff. You are creating a policy where Alabama, Texas, Louisiana, and Florida are actually more racially progressive than New York City, because you are coming up with a policy, because de Blasio is such a stupid cunt rag that actually turns the clock back like 40 or 50 years. This is fucking insane. Like, who the fuck is going to sign up for this job? I wouldn't. Again, my grandparents came here in the early 60s from Italy, and they like to tell me what New York City was about in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. I don't know who the fuck would sign up to do this job. I'd expect to disappear. If I were doing this job, I were going into businesses in underprivileged communities and forcing you to either A, shut down, or B, fire 40% of the people there during a shitty economic downturn. I would expect to end up on the bottom of the East River. There's no way in fuck I'm taking that job. And I'm very curious what type of person has the stones to actually take that job. Again, you walk into my store and you try to write me up for some bullshit little fine on some laptop crap, fine, whatever. You walk into businesses looking to get rid of 30 to 40% of their employees in underprivileged communities. Dude, I would expect to disappear. Like, see, crazier shit happened in New York City throughout the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and I'm confident that if someone excavated the East River, they'd find a lot of people down there. This is not the type of policy that is going to lead to less conflict and better public health outcomes in the city. At all. You know, a lot of people will say that New York City is one of the richest cities in the world. And in reality, it's got like a small segment of rich people, a decent segment of people that are doing really well, and a whole giant-ass segment of people that are just broke as shit. Of the 8.5 million people, it's not like 4 or 7 or 8 million of those people are people that are making six figures. You got this segment that is insanely wealthy, this segment that's doing all right, and this segment that's just broke as shit. And there's no way in hell that you're gonna have I don't see how an employee. I just don't see a bodega on Nostrand Avenue going over to the counter person and saying, "I need to see that you have a vaccine card or you're fired." Like, nobody's going to enforce this. Even the existing mandate is not being enforced. Restaurants are not doing this. They are protesting it. They are not protesting it by saying we're not doing it. They're protesting it by when I say, "Oh yeah, I have my card," and as I'm lifting up, they're like, "Oh, don't worry about it." I have never had somebody, again, one restaurant, never had one in Manhattan, Queens, Bronx, Staten Island, one in Brooklyn. Never had any in those other 4 boroughs that actually bothered to look at what I was giving them. I could have been showing them a library card. I could have been showing them a Metro card. I could have been showing them a fucking tissue. And what pisses me off about this entire thing more than anything else is that I am not an anti-vaxxer. I actually would like to see people get vaccinated. What this is doing is this is creating a new anti-vax movement that is going to last for a really long time. It is it's just stirring the pot for a bigger and bigger and bigger culture war regarding vaccines. At the end of the day, I don't even think that this is going to result in an improved vaccination rate. Again, I made my thoughts on the vaccine available to my employees. I did not mandate it. I did not say you're not getting a raise. I didn't say any of this stuff. I said, here's my thoughts on the vaccine. Here's why I'm getting it. Here's why I think people here should consider getting it. You do you. And I had a vaccination rate of 11 out of 12 people. Actually, no, because I had another person. I had a vaccination rate of 12 out of 13 people at the time. And this was before there was a mandate for going to bars and restaurants and everything else. Before there was any sort of mandate. 12 out of 13 people got it by me just respecting them as human beings and asking them rather than getting on television and saying, the voluntary phase is over. Seeing de Blasio get on television and actually say again, that little clip over there, that is going to radicalize so many people. That clip is going to be played over and over and over again on corners of the internet that actually do produce harmful information on vaccines. You have parts of the internet where they make money. They make their money off of clicks and everything else from talking about how this vaccine is going to kill you, which is bullshit, talking about how this vaccine is, it's some sort of agent of fucking change your DNA and all this other bullshit. They're going to play that little clip of what de Blasio said on television, and they're going to recruit and radicalize a lot more people because he is a fucking idiot. I cannot wait for that politician to be out of this city. De Blasio, if you are watching this, you are a cunt, and I will not be following your mandate. Not because I am anti-vaccination. I'm very pro-vaccination and was vaccinated myself, but rather because you are a cunt who cannot do anything right, and this is proof of that. That's it for today, and as always, I hope you learned something.